Hi, I'm going to explain the different types of 7th chord in music generally. I'm a guitarist, so I'm using a guitar to demonstrate this, but this will apply to any instrument. So it's really just the theory of 7th chords. Now, the way 7th chords work, or the way they're constructed, is you start off with a major chord or a minor chord. Now these are called triads. The basic major or minor chord is a triad. That means it's only got 3 notes in it. And when you play them on a guitar, sometimes you're playing more than 3 actual notes, like 3 strings. Say for example a G chord. I'm playing 6 strings there, but I've only actually got 3 different notes involved in that chord. It's just I'm playing some of them more than once. So for example, for this chord I need G, B, D. I've got G, B, D, G again, B again, G again. So there's 3 Gs in that shape. So there's actually only 3 different notes involved in that. So that's important to know, to understand that before you look at 7th chords. So what happens when you take a basic major or minor chord and then you add another note to it, the first note that's normally added when you extend the chord to make it more sophisticated, the first note is a 7th. Now to demonstrate this on the guitar, I'm just going to use a D chord as an example. So here's my basic D chord. So that's the basic triad. I'm adding the bass note here, but this contains the 3 notes we need. But I'm just adding the bass note because it sounds good and that's how you normally learn that chord. So that's the basic D major, and then I've got a basic D minor. And hopefully you already know those two. So major, minor. So they're the 2 chords that we're starting with. And then if I go up a D major scale, I'm going to play it here. There's 8 notes there, there's 7 different notes. Because the 8th one is just the first one, that's a D again, up an octave. So I've got 7 different notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the first one again. So the 7th note is that. That's a C sharp. Right, so what I can do is I can add a C sharp note, which is the 7th of the scale. I can add that to the 2 chords. So if I add a C sharp to the D chord, there's a C sharp here. We get this. Now because I've put the bass note here, the root note, the D, it doesn't matter that I've got rid of this one, which was a root note. By adding this, I'm losing this one. But that doesn't matter because I've already got a D here anyway. So I've now got 4 notes. I've got the basic triad plus the C sharp. So I've added the 7. I've added that to the basic major chord. Now that chord I've ended up with is called a major 7. So it's a D major 7. It was the D major chord and I've added the 7. Now I'm going to take the D minor chord and I'm going to add the 7 to that. Same note, C sharp. Now this one's a bit odd sounding. So there's D minor. So I'm just going to change to that. It's not used very often, this one. It exists, but it's barely ever in a song. Now that one's called D minor major 7. So the first one was D major 7, which was a D chord with the 7 added. Then I've got a D minor major 7. It's a D minor chord with the 7 added. And there's 2 more. What we can then do is add what's called a flat 7 to both chords. So if I go up the scale again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. C sharp there is the 7. Therefore if I flatten it, so I'm now playing a note that's not in the scale. I've moved the C sharp down 1 to a C, so I've flattened the C sharp to make a C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, flatten it. And that's there on that string. So now I'm going to add that note to both of the chords, the major and the minor. So I'll take the major, add the C, which means I've got to get rid of this and go like that. So you can hear that note. So I've got 4 notes still, but now I'm using a C rather than a C sharp. That one's called D dominant 7th. And when you're referring to dominant 7th chords, you can just ignore the word dominant and just call it D7. So some of the chords you learn when you first start playing are 7ths, and that there'll be dominant 7ths, like A7, E7, G7. So that's D dominant 7th. And now I'll add the same note, the flat 7, the C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Flatten it. I'll add that to the D minor, which is this. So now I've got to put that one in, so I'm going to do it like this. I could do that. How most people play it is flattening that finger over both strings. Now that one's called D minor 7. So just to recap on the 4 shapes, we start off with major and minor. Okay, and then once we add the 7th note, we've got D major 7. It can be played like that. D minor major 7. D dominant 7, which we could just call D7. And D minor 7. So, major chord with the 7, which in this key is a C sharp, makes a major 7. Minor chord with the 7, C sharp, makes minor major 7. Major chord with the flat 7, which was a C, makes dominant 7. And minor chord with the flat 7, C, that makes minor 7. So you end up with 4 different 7th chords: major 7, major 7, dominant 7, and minor 7. Now most of the time when I teach this, I say to people, just forget about the minor major 7, the second one. It's just used so rarely that to begin with you can almost just forget about it and pretend it doesn't exist. But it does exist, so at some point it's worth knowing about it. And when you're looking at the theory like we are today, it's easier to include it. But for practical purposes, when you're actually playing, you're not really going to need to know much about that one. So the 3 to concentrate on are the major 7, the dominant 7, and the minor 7. So in the key of D, that's major 7, or that, minor 7, and dominant 7. So if you take guitar grades and things like that, you won't really ever come across the minor major 7, but you will those 3 quite early on. If I just play those as a bar chord, still in D, I could do a D bar chord here, D minor bar chord, go up the scale again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's the 7, there's the flat 7, so I can do a major 7, remember that's the 7th note, with the major chord, so that becomes that. If I flatten the 7 but keep the major chord, that means take that one away because it's going down to there. That's dominant 7. If I take the minor chord, play the flattened 7, which is that note, just take your little finger away. That's minor 7. And then the one that we barely ever get is the minor chord with the major 7 note, the C sharp, so that's that. So if I do them here, major, minor, major 7, minor major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, bar chord, major, minor, major 7, minor major 7, dominant 7, minor 7. And the advantage of learning them as a bar chord is obviously that you're not just stuck with D. You can just move these shapes along and you'll have all the other 7th chords in every key. So just really quickly, if I go to here, which is C, I'm not thinking about note names now, I'm just thinking about shapes. Major, minor, major 7, minor major 7, dominant 7, minor 7. Hope that makes sense. This is one of those lessons where you may find you need to watch this a few times for it to completely sink in. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments when this is on YouTube. To begin with, this won't be on YouTube, it'll be on my website, so in which case you'll know me and you can just ask me. But yeah, any questions, just ask. And if you like this lesson, then please click like and subscribe if you haven't done already. Okay, thanks.